What will truly, effectively arrest further collapse of the imposed system until we establish true, sustainable economy? As we have shown, the costs of terminal debt can only be multiplied further beyond us by no more than maintaining a vital circulation. Because this fundamental cause of failure cannot be a product of representative government, and because it is a crime of the greatest magnitude against us, the most appropriate course is to immediately suspend payments against all debts originating in the imposed system. This alone will relieve the cause of failure over the certain protests of the exploiters. Necessarily, however, it will also prevent ever more destructive, vast near-term deflation if, on the other hand, we continue to service the terminal debt without creditworthiness to replenish the circulation. Our model of inherent monetary failure has demonstrated this latter consequence, which soon manifests in utter failure. We will suffer failure if we continue to service the present terminal sums of debt. How then do we resolve these insoluble sums of debt in regard to the present system? Unless the imposed systems are in fact in spirit constitutional, and unless the artificially multiplied obligations are valid and binding contracts in all respects, then there is no enforceable obligation, and our dispossession is indeed so great a crime. As we know further, no contract can impose impossible obligations upon a subject party, and so a fact of inherent, irreversible multiplication of indebtedness itself invalidates all such ostensible contracts. Our thesis of mathematically perfected economy then becomes the vital defense for officially invalidating these inherently multiplying obligations. If no enforceable obligation thus exists, the pretended money and indebtedness are void. If, on the other hand, the advocates of exploitation can and will demonstrate the sustainability of the imposed system, it may stand on such purported legitimate footing. But certainly if their system legitimately serves us, they will welcome the opportunity to prove so. On the further hand, the people may claim their own right to issue irredeemable promises to pay, and thus to resolve the insoluble sum of debt by issuing equivalent irredeemable promises to pay, in turn taking the battle over usurpation to court on this further count. How do we implement mathematically perfected economy? To certify our promises to pay and to produce a uniform currency, a common foundry certifies our creditworthiness, issues the common currency, and automates payment at the rate of consumption. Thus, the implementation of mathematically perfected economy is practically costless. Through this common foundry, the people are restored their right to issue their promises to pay, free of extrinsic manipulation, adulteration, or exploitation of those promises, or the natural opportunity to make good on them. Overall, in the mathematically perfected economy, then, a $100,000 home with a 100-year lifespan costs us only $1,000 per year, or $83.33 per month. Let us examine the life cycles, proportions, circulation, value, and debt, or commitment, which ensure perpetual sustainability and which maintain the value of the circulation throughout this example case. Lifespan and original value determine the linear depreciation of our example. Creditworthiness is certified, the builder of the home is paid, the payments are automatically deducted from the account of the debtor, and thus we have an original related circulation equal to the original value and a binding commitment to an equal debt. The relatively minuscule annual costs of servicing the principal of this debt are represented by the yellow superimposed segments of the respective circulation, value, and debt bars. Here, after making a year's payments against the resultant minimal possible periodic costs, the related currency in circulation remains equal to the remaining value and remaining debt. It is this perpetual one-to-one-to-one relationship, which by virtue of its commitment to a debt equal to the remaining value, maintains the value of every unit of the circulation throughout its lifespan by linking that portion of the circulation to a related portion of the debt. As we walk through the first several payments, we readily see that indeed the remaining value, monetary obligation, or debt, and remaining circulation remain constantly equivalent. At any and every moment of the lifespan of the represented industry, the remaining circulation and commitment are equivalent to remaining value. And because all this is achieved, even without regulation, simply by eradicating interest and adopting an obligatory schedule of payment, we are obliged only to pay for the home what we consume of it, with no more than an equal measure of our own production. Only because we have eliminated exploitation do we have truly free markets or free enterprise. And only so then do we sustain the very purpose of truly free enterprise and markets, to determine and exchange equal value. So this is what restoring the people's right to issue their own promises to pay represents, with all the necessary processes virtually costless and automated by a common foundry. Mathematics' solution of our categoric faults has demonstrated that those faults are inherently terminal, that we must eradicate exploitation, the form of which multiplies itself into terminal indebtedness. The resultant mathematically perfected economy is a singular prescription for the only currency which maintains its value throughout its life cycle by virtue of proportion and commitment. The only currency which costs us nothing, or virtually nothing, sustains all potential industry forever, allows us to pay for production with only equal measures of production, and solves inflation, deflation, and multiplication of debt without even regulation. Transitioning to this system is not only vital to avoiding inevitable failure, the necessary transition reduces artificial debt to real debt, and the proportional costs of servicing debt as well, to mere fractions of present costs. It will only be by transitioning to mathematically perfected economy as prescribed that honest and accountable generations will not leave criminal, crippling debt to their own progeny. With natural, unexploited home ownership made possible on the scale of a $100,000 home with a 100-year lifespan for $1,000 per year, or $83.33 per month, there will never be a so-called housing or foreclosure crisis, or people starving across the world so that exploiters can only wait for a better day to dispossess us by what they call work and never even touch with their own hands.